So now I want to add some extra animation to this one. To do so, I'm going to create another rectangle. First, I make sure that my previous shape is not selected. So I go to the layer panel and click outside somewhere in the layer panel. So my previous shape layer is deselected. Then I go to my shape tool, choose rectangle, and come to my viewport, click and drag. Now that I'm happy with my shape, I'm gonna change the color. I'm gonna change the name of my layer as well by right-clicking on my shape layer and choosing rename, and then change it to little square. The animation that I'm planning to create here, right now we have the biggest square rotating. For the little square, I want the shape to move from left to right while following the rotation of the biggest square. But if I want to create a rotation animation for the little square exactly following the biggest square, it might be a lot of work and it might not be very good at the end. So there is a trick that I can do here, and that's called parenting. Parenting means we assign a shape as parent and assign another shape as a child, and then we link the child to the parent, so the child will follow any action or transformation that the parent shape would do. In this case, the biggest square is the parent and the little square is the child. We can find the parent option in the layer panel in front of the little square. There is this little line icon that called parent pick. We can click, drag it, and drop it on top of the biggest square layer. And as soon as we release, the biggest square is added as the parent of little square. We can also do this another way by just selecting this menu and finding the layer that we want to be the parent. Either way, we choose the biggest square as the parent and the little square as child. Now let's see what happened here. If I play my animation, the little square is following the biggest square rotation. So now we have done half of the animation we have in mind. What is left is to animate the position of the little square, to move from left to right and back right to left, and to repeat this a few times. I want this to be kinda in align with the biggest square keyframing and animation. So to see the biggest square keyframes and the place of the keyframes in the timeline, I select the biggest square, the square layer, and press U key on your keyframe. And as soon as I do that, I can see all the keyframes that I already created for the square, the yellow square. U is a great shortcut, so whenever you create a lot of animations for one single shape, just by pressing U, you can see all the keyframe inside that shape layer. Now that I can see where the keyframe for the biggest square are positioned, I put my time indicator on the first key and go back to the little square. I select little square and I'm planning to animate position, so I expand the transform options. But this seems a little bit crowded, so It might be a bit confusing. Sometimes we make mistake. Instead of creating a keyframe for position, we create a keyframe for rotation or scale. So one thing we can do is to use shortcut to just see the transform option we are planning to animate. And the shortcuts here are pretty easy. For example, for position, let's see. For position, the shortcut is P. For scale, the shortcut is S. And for rotation, the shortcut is R. If you work with them a few times, you find them very helpful, probably. So right now I wanna just animate the position, so I press P and I only see the position options. I start with creating the first key by clicking on stopwatch. Then I move my time indicator 20 frames ahead. And here I just need to change the position of my shape. So it's gonna move from left to right, which right now would be from top to bottom. I select my selection tool and click and drag the square down. You can hold the shift key, so when you are dragging your shape down, it's kind of a snap. So let's see what happens. Yeah. So I have the little square moving from left to right and ending up at the bottom, basically. Then I want to keep the little square static for 2 frames, so I put the time indicator 2 frames ahead. I create a keyframe manually by clicking in this diamond beside position. And then I continue putting the time slider 20 frames ahead, moving the little square back to its first position, keeping it static for 2 frames, moving the time slider 20 frames ahead, again moving the little square, keep it static for 2 seconds, and finally finishing our animation by putting back the real square in the first place it started. We can do that by copying the first key as well. So we select the key, press Command C, put our time indicator where we want to paste the key, press Command V, and we copy paste this key to here at the end. So let's see what happened. Now we have the animation that we want. The last thing left is to put a nice background for this animation. I wanna put a paper texture background for this animation. So what I do is I go to Google Image, then I search paper texture, and in Google Image we have an option called Tools, which we can select and just search the size large images. So we have an image that have a good quality. This one, it looks good, so I click on it and then I right click here and save the image. I already saved this before, so it asked me where to replace it. I go back to my After Effects and double click in the inside project browser. This allows me to import the image that I downloaded. I make sure to remember where I saved the image, which is desktop. Right now I imported the image into project browser. But to import it into my composition, I need to drag and drop it at the bottom of my layer panel because I want it to be behind two squares that I animated. I can put them in, obviously anything that you import you can put in between your layers or on top of the layers, but right now I want it in the background, so I drag and drop it at the bottom of my layer panel. And I can see the image in my composition viewport, but it's smaller than my composition, so I'm gonna expand transform options, bring up the scale and make it bigger so it fills the background. Great, we are done. Now it's time for us to save our project, which is something that I probably should have done much earlier, because if something happens or the software crashes, I have to start from scratch. If I go to File and save my project, I can browse it and I can change the name to Animate1 and save my project. So what I see on my desktop is this file, which is a After Effects format kind of file. It is important to know that just having your After Effects project file is not enough. If you have imported some footages to your project, such as this image, or other videos, audios, and etc., you need to have them with your project all the time. So for instance, if I create it on MATLAB and save it on the computer there, and then use my flash drive to move this project to another computer at home, and forget to bring this image footage that I imported to the project, let's delete this. What happens is when I try to reopen this in another computer, I get some error saying that one file is missing, and then I see my project like this. We don't want that. So I'm gonna bring back the image and I'm gonna right click on the image in the project panel to replace it. So what we want here is to go to File, and instead of just saving the project, come down and choose Dependencies. When we choose Dependencies, it allows us to not only save our project, but also collect any footage from anywhere that we imported to our project and composition. So I choose Collect File, and it asks me, do you want to save your project first? And I say yes. Then I press Collect. Now I have a folder that I can change the name, of course. For example, let's say Project 1. And when I save it and go back to desktop, I have this folder here, project folder, Project 1 folder. And when I open it, I have my After Effects file as well as the image that I imported into my project. So when I open it again, everything is gonna be fine. Now please do the first exercise that you can find on Moodle, and when you finish, if still time left, you can do 2 more exercises that you can find on Moodle.